Hi, so this is an instructional video request by Frosty1221. Basically, he was requesting a game with someone strong enough. I mentioned my rating 2200. He said, yeah, I'm pretty strong enough, so I'm able to play a game against him. Usually people like this that are looking for someone strong most likely have prepared a strong line or just on a good win streaks and they're looking for someone strong. So here I am offering myself for a game. I believe the theory here is a queenside fianchetto and bishop e4. The plan here is to play pawn to c4, and if bishop b4 comes to check, instead of blocking with bishop d2, I will block with a knight on fd2 to the point that I'm still able to play pawn to knight to c3 later on. I'll push pawn to c4 first, and I will delay my knight c3 development. So I'm waiting for this bishop to hop in first, and then I'll block with a knight. And then I'll kick out with pawn to a3, pawn to b4, and then take out the knight on c3 later on. So this knight on b1 will most likely wait until this dark square bishop moves somewhere. Bishop b4 or bishop e7. So that's the plan here. My opponent can continue queenside fianchetto with bishop b7. So I'll be defending with, not really defending, but just taking this bishop out somewhere. I'll play bishop e2, although bishop d3 is also playable. I prefer bishop e2 so I don't have to worry about my light square bishop being out of safety. Also, I want to rush castling so I can block with knight d2 later on. Check. Okay, my opponent is attacking the center right away before castling. So what I'm gonna do is castle first, and then play knight c3, and then push pawn to d5. There are 1, 2, 3 defenders on the d5 square, and I potentially could have 1, 2, 3, 4. Actually, my opponent doesn't allow me to attack the d5 square, so I can take this pawn on d5, and if knight takes or bishop takes, I can attack it with either pawn or knight. If knight takes, I have pawn. If bishop takes, I have knight. The point is that I'm trying to avoid knight on knight exchanges. Also, if knight takes, there's no coverage on the e4 square temporarily, so I can definitely push. And then it will take him another move to go back, and then by that time I already have pawn to d5. Yeah, I'm okay. Bishop takes. It looks inaccurate because I gain development with knight c3, attacking the bishop. Therefore, he has to go back. The problem with bishop takes is that I also have this bishop e5 check, and also queen a4 check, and also the knight on e5 can come over and help with the attack. Let me count first. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2. I don't think my opponent has that many defenders. Let's challenge it. Bishop b5 check. This is the problem if you don't castle right away, is that your king will be vulnerable to check. So let's challenge to see if he will have enough defender against this attack. I have a bishop and a queen coming over. Okay. Looks like he has enough actually. But what if while he's defending on this diagonal, I can come and attack the center instead? So, do I have enough attackers? 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. Actually, I forgot to adjust my layout. There you go. My layout is fine, right? Actually, it needs readjustment again. It's just.com. Actually, I can adjust it now. Here we go. Hopefully it's good enough. I'm trying not to get distracted. I'm planning to play knight e5, putting another attacker Actually, that sounds like a plan because what will happen is that my opponent can potentially play bishop e7, and I can play knight c6, attacking both bishop and queen. And that will force an exchange on this right square bishop for a knight. And typically, a fianchetto bishop is stronger than a knight. So I'm getting rid of a strong bishop here. I'm expecting bishop e7 and then knight c6. What will I do if pawn to e6? I think pawn to a6, I have bishop c6. Takes. I'm still getting rid of that fianchetto bishop. I think I'm willing to exchange my knight or light square bishop for this fianchetto bishop here. That's the plan. That's the plan. Also, it's too warm today. If you're wondering why I'm sweating so much, I just took a cold shower 30 minutes ago, and now I'm back to square one. I'm sweating again. I stink again. So basically, I just wasted a lot of water for shower. I don't know, wasted water, soap, and shampoo, just so I can be sweaty like this again. So yeah, it's just too warm. It's 100 Fahrenheit at the moment, which is about 35 to 40 degrees Celsius. It's too hot. Okay, my opponent played queen c7. It doesn't really add any attacker. I mean, any defender on the d7 square. I think my opponent is planning to play bishop d6. Trying to attack this knight on e5. He's doing a counter attack, is what I'm trying to say. So, my business here isn't really doing much. I can also open up the d file with d takes c5. Takes. No, he still has enough defender, that's the issue. But I can't really abuse this attack on the d7 square. He has enough defender. How do I add another attacker? That's the question. Or maybe I can just take, you know. I'm thinking of just taking, you know, and then he'll take with a knight. Yeah. And then it's just an even exchange, actually. I thought I had something there. But then I have pawn to d5 now. So I deflected one of the defender on the center. Now I can push d5. And then maybe do some damage on this pawn structure. Missing f-pawn, and then you're about to castle there. It's not gonna be pleasant. At least I did some damage on the structure. I thought I'm not gonna achieve anything, just back up my pieces. But no, I'm able to achieve something. It's good. If pawn takes, knight takes, attacks the queen, so he has to move again. It disrupts his castling plan, so that's pretty good, I guess. As long as I'm delaying his castling here, it should be pretty good. What if queen d6? Is that a problem? Queen d6, I have pawn to e4, backing up the pawn on d5. And then after takes, that opens up the e file. So I can open up my rook over here. That's if queen d6. What are other potential moves here? Just checking my layout. Layout's pretty good. Last week I had allergy problem. Now it's the heat wave, so I'm just sweating a lot. I have to look up whether sweating too much like this is good or bad for the skin. I'm aware of sunlight being bad for the skin, but how about just excessive heat? Also, okay, he wants to attack my h2 pawn. Huh, interesting. I can even take this on an e6 and then deliver a check, move back, but that's too dangerous, isn't it? Because my opponent isn't castled yet, therefore the king can sit there in the center. I'll try not to gambit, actually. Try not to gambit. I can also just play pawn to f4. Pawn to f4 blocks this attack. I'm worried about pawn to g5. Just attacking that key square in f4 if I push f4. If I push g6, h5 is coming. So regardless of which pawn I push, something is coming. So should I worry about whether to push g3 or f4? I'll push f4 instead. I think a vulnerable g-file is more beneficial for me if his attack doesn't go his way. So I'll push f4 instead of g3. If his h-pawn attack doesn't work, it doesn't really harm his structure. Okay, he castled. After takes, there's an isolated pawn on the center that I can potentially target. Also, I can play something like knight e4, push 7, and then pawn push. It's too complicated to... No, it's too complex to set up actually. Now, if I try to open up the f-file, there's an extra attacker on my f4 pawn, so probably an isolated pawn for him would be more beneficial for him. So what I can do instead is that I can just push pawns. I can push the pawn, pawn takes d5, and then pawn to e5, kicking out this bishop so he has to go back. I have knight takes, attacking both bishop and queen. So I think that's a better plan than just setting up an isolated pawn for my opponent. The pawn to e4. Also, pawn to e4 prevents him from playing knight f6, which is an optimal square for a knight. So optimal squares for knights are f6 and c6 as black. And then optimal squares for white's knights are c3 and f3. So f6 is an optimal square for black. I'm preventing him to do so with pawn to e4. Since the bishop is already on d6, the knight cannot be on f6. There's this pawn to e5 threat. Okay, definitely. Let's take. Now he can sack a knight, but it's not that effective. Since I can play queen h5, defending my h2 square. So yeah, I'll push. I did not give out a free pawn because I can just take like this. And it attacks the queen. So he's forced to really just go back. I'm definitely getting something valuable out of this exchange. Either the fianchetto bishop or the bishop for a knight. Something. And I'm trading my knight for a bishop. It's even better. Okay. Knight takes d5. Should be good enough. I mean, if it's a blitz game, I would have taken right away. But I'm just looking left and right to see if there's any better moves. I think this is it. Yeah, bishop has to take, and then queen takes d5. And then after any rook to d8, I could just pull back easily and go over to the other side of the board. And then I can also set up this bishop to d3. Just a sec. Today is just a terrible day. Now I'm having a runny nose. Have some napkin here. Just a second, I'll be back. I don't think there's any immediate attack. Be right back. Sorry, I had to break my nose. Okay, as planned, after rook d8, centralizing the rook, my plan is to go over to the other side of the board with his queen. I am still preventing the knight from hopping into his optimal squares. The undeveloped pieces that I have are the dark square bishop and the rook on a1. I would have played queen f3 a long time ago. Like I said, I'm not that slow. I kind of have an idea of what to do, but I'm just looking to see if there's any better moves. So I need a good good placements for this bishop and rook. I can fianchetto structure on this queen side, pawn to b3, bishop b2, because I'm defending this overextended e5 pawn. It's currently defended by another pawn, but I'm thinking my opponent can play pawn to f6 to challenge that pawn. So yeah. Also, after so my plan is pawn to b3, bishop b2, rook a e1, putting an extra piece to defend the e5 pawn. So I'll have a bishop and rook defending the e5 pawn, and when the e5 pawn becomes well barricaded, I have a chance to push my f5 to f6. I think that's the plan. I don't see anything else. My initial plan was just to play queen h5, but I think stabilizing my center before attacking on the f-file would be a much better strategy. I'm locking down the knight. I'm trying to lock down the knight, although he can maneuver the knight to knight b8 and knight c6, and then potentially playing knight d4. Knight d4 is a good square, so I'll try to stop it. Okay, he pushed f6 early, and I didn't even have the chance to barricade it. So what I can do instead is push pawn to e6. I don't want to trade because trading pawns here will be beneficial for black. Having this open file for the rook, and also having a good square for a knight. So knight takes, and then once he removes it, he has a good vision on my queen. So I'm planning not to trade. I have an in-between move of bishop c4 check. I'm still considering if it's that good of a move. I can also play queen h5. Pawn takes, pawn takes. I'll lose a pawn though. Why would I do that? I'll lose a pawn. So I have to do something right away, like an immediate move, like pushing pawn on e6 or exchanging. Pawn takes f6 is not ideal. Or I can also take bishop takes d7, not that good of a move either. I want to push e6, and then he's forced to play knight b8. How good is that move? Pawn e6, knight b8. I think I'm just opening my dark square diagonal if I do that. Huh. Interesting. So I'll do an in-between check actually. No. Check here is fine. I can check him first before pushing. I think I'll go with that plan. I can't find a better plan. But I think this dark square pawn on f4 has to stay, just in case my opponent wants to attack my h2 pawn with bishop d6. So this pawn on e5 cannot stay there any longer, but I think this pawn on f4 should be able to do so. To get the work done to defend my h2 pawn. I don't want my queen being stuck on h file just so I can defend the pawn. So I'll stay here. Also, my opponent can go for a6 b5 move, trying to kick out this bishop. But how good is this bishop in this angle actually? I mean, it defends the pawn, but it's not being attacked by anything. Also, I can play queen h6, bishop d3, provoking this pawn push, and then I can fianchetto structure on the queen side. I don't know which one is better. I am afraid that this rook on a1 is underdeveloped, so I might just go with a simple b3 bishop b2 move. If I play queen h3, I'm looking for an immediate attack, which doesn't guarantee to work. So I might get in trouble if I try to stay underdeveloped here. I will plan to maintain my development. Also, but then I'm afraid of pawn f5, bishop f6 idea, lifting the rook. Hard to decide here. Also, my diagonal here is too open. I can't really push pawn to g4 or pawn to h4. Or can I push h4? That's too aggressive, isn't it? I'm not. I just don't have a good placement for this dark square bishop, that's all. I'll play b3. It looks like a simple move. b3, pawn to f5, bishop b2, and then there's an even trade over there. I might not like it. Actually, I'll play b3 first to see what my opponent wants to do. So, if my opponent played bishop d6, I can fianchetto over here on bishop b2. However, if my opponent wants to push f5, bishop f6, and then I'll play rook b1, and then maybe put my dark square bishop somewhere else, just so I can prevent an even exchange bishop for bishop. Okay, so I'll find, I think b3 is a good waiting move, just so I can figure out what he wants to do with his dark square bishop. He goes to the left, I go to the left. He goes to the right, I go to the right. I'm playing tango with this bishop, trying to avoid him. It's like back in high school again. You know, you're trying to chase a girl and then you're getting friend zoned. So I'm trying to friend zone this dark square bishop. Okay, my opponent's plan is knight d4. But I can't find any immediate follow-up. After knight d4, I mean, sure, you don't even have knight e2 check. So I guess I'll be playing queen h3. I definitely want to play queen h3 for provoking this. If I provoke pawn to f5, he's guaranteed to play bishop f6, Then I'll go over to bishop e3. I think that is a plan. Also, queen h3 just prevents my opponent for jumping the knight with an attack on a queen. So here, if you play knight d4, you don't have an attack on my queen anymore. It's in a good square, but it's less effective. Also, knight d4 blocks your rook. Bishop on d3. Threatening a checkmate over there. And since there's a pawn on f6, knight cannot jump there to defend h7 square. So if there's a knight missing on f6, this is typically how I attack the king's side. I place either a rook or a queen on h file and line up my bishop over there. So I think, actually I'm prepared to play bishop d3 next move regardless. Bishop d3, pawn to f5, bishop. Actually, this dark square bishop is still stronger. I don't know. It's hard to come up with a plan because of this pawn to e6. It's an overextended pawn. I have to take care of it. Also have this rook a1 underdeveloped. I don't know. My position is cramped up, but so does my opponent's. My focus is to cramp up my opponent's position to the point that he's delayed in development and he's unable to attack. As long as black isn't able to attack me, I think I'm fine. Rook lift. Interesting. Trying to attack this pawn. But then I can play bishop d3 now. And if you block with a pawn, I'll just take it. You only have one defender on f5 square. So I think the king's safety is lacking here. I can't find any better moves other than bishop d3. So I'll play it right away. Checkmate. Only move that I'm seeing is pawn to f5, bishop takes f5. Also, you can play this move, pawn to h6, but then I have this maneuver, queen g4, queen g6, and then finally attacking over there. I don't know, we'll find out how my opponent wants to defend against this threat. But I think rook d6 is inaccurate because you're putting one attacker on a pawn. Okay, now I can play, instead of playing queen g4, which is slow, I can definitely play queen f5, don't I? I was planning to make a slow maneuver there. Queen g4, queen g6. Looks like queen f5 is pretty much straightforward, threatening a checkmate over there. And it looks like game over already. Yeah. Oh, rook takes d3. Sacrificing a rook? Or... I'll be up on exchange. But it's still playable. Follow-up moves for my opponent could be like, okay, he took it. Follow-up moves would be bishop d6, attacking this pawn, but this pawn is well defended. I think my plan is to just lift up this bishop, and then finally develop my rook that's sleeping on a1. It's just been there, it's not doing anything. Also, he's attacking my queen. I can play queen e4 because I can see knight d4 coming, or maybe queen g6 is a more aggressive move because my queen sits there, but he's unable to deflect it with any light square bishop or knight. Yeah, there's no knight e7 move, so he cannot immediately attack my queen. Therefore, I can sit here. Yeah. can sit here. There's rook d5. No, rook cannot leave the back rank because of queen e8 check threat. Oh, knight finally jumped in. Okay, he's trying to pick up the pawn on e6, so I'll defend it with pawn to f5. But f5 opens up my dark square, which is an attack on my h2 square. But the thing is that bishop is in front. If bishop is on the back, then queen is on d6, that would be a checkmate threat. But bishop is in front. So I don't see it being that effective of an attack. But we'll see. I don't see any better move other than pawn to f5. F5 looks weakening, but I can't see anything better. Therefore, f5 it is. And it weakens my dark square. What other choices do I have? Actually, I can play bishop e3 and then just look for even exchanges. I'm able to maintain. That's a more solid plan actually, to just maintain my center control and not weaken my dark square diagonal. Many choices, you know. Yeah, bishop e3 is a more solid move. Just taking out the bishop, developing the rook on a1 that hasn't even moved yet, it's not doing anything. Yeah, I'll play that instead. But then I'm losing a pawn here. Yeah, actually the point of pawn f5 is actually to defend the pawn. So I'll keep it simple and I'm just defending a pawn. I almost forgot that the reason why I'm pushing f5 is to defend the pawn. So knight d4 attacks the pawn. I'm just looking for a defender for the pawn, that's why I move pawn to f5. And finally my bishop can move. I don't see any other optimal squares for bishop. Actually, I have bishop f4 attacking the queen, but it's just a temp. Should I attack it? Point of bishop f4 is to prevent bishop d6, but what if my opponent plays bishop d6 next move? I actually have bishop takes h6 check. Pawn takes. No, bishop h no check. And then bishop check, king h1. Bishop back to d6. I don't know if that's winning. Actually, my opponent played bishop d6. Okay. What's the plan here? Just give up the h2 pawn? Let him checkmate? But then bishop sits on g2 like a havoc hammer. Bishop takes h2, bishop g3, and he just sits there. That'd be kinda annoying. Do I have anything better? I'm gonna have pawn to h3. But that weakens my g3 square. I mean, yeah. Many bad choices. I can also just defend with queen h5. I mean, my queen isn't doing anything here. I mean, g6 is a good square, but I can sit on h5 instead. Yeah. While the pieces over here are developing. So I'm still in the developing process. Because this bishop and rook haven't moved yet. So my goal is to move these pieces out of its original square. I don't like bishop e3 because there's a knight on c2 fork and the bishop will be undefended. Bishop a3 looks like in a closed pawn structure already. The only choice that I really have is bishop b2. And then finally the rook can move out. I just don't like that I'm underdeveloped on the queen side and it's already moved 28. I'm up the exchange, but I'm underdeveloped. So I'll catch up on the development, and afterwards, that's when I will start feeling my advantage on the pieces. If I'm able to develop properly. So I traded development for material advantage. What I do is actually bishop b2 attacks pawn to f6. And then after pawn takes g6, I have a check over here, winning another pawn. So this could potentially be a dark square bishop for 3 pawns. Actually, bishop b2 is a good move. Just realized it now. And that's if my opponent removed his knight. If he doesn't remove, what do I do? Take it? Well, the rook on a1 is undeveloped. So I want to play bishop b2 and then maybe rook ae1 and then maybe start sacrifice. Not really. I'm assuming that this knight stays on d4. So I'll play bishop b2, rook ae1. I don't have pawn push option since there's queen and bishop defending e7 square. So my focus right now is just the piece development. Bishop b2, rook ae1, and then depending on what my opponent does is how I will respond to it. As long as I'm not losing on the spot, I should be able to exercise my piece advantage. Downside of bishop b2 is that I might allow my opponent to play rook d2, but as of now there are 2 pieces that are blocking the rook from being played on d2. Exciting. Hot. So there's no rook d2 move while I maneuver. Now I'm thinking of rook d2. Maybe it's better to play rook ad1. Oh, he wants to reveal attack on the rook. I think rook b1 is my only move. I can also sack it. Why do I have to sack? I'm thinking of lines like check, move, bishop takes, and rook takes a1. But why do I have to go to complicated lines like that? Can I just keep it simple? Rook b1, rook b1, simple move. That's actually a good move, bishop e5 protecting the pawn on f6, because I was trying to sack my bishop earlier by playing bishop b2. Well, do I get trouble here? So rook b1, knight c6, bishop goes somewhere, let's say bishop here. Actually, let's keep it simple for now. Rook b1. What could go wrong with rook b1? Keep it simple. Keep it simple. Should I have accepted sack? Now I'm thinking back, maybe I should have. Knight e2, queen takes, bishop takes, pawn takes, rook takes a1, and maybe have some advantage if I let him do it. No, not really, I'll be down in exchange. Yeah, keep it simple. Rook b1. Removing the attack from that bishop with the revealed check. So. Sometimes complicated ones get me tripping. Simple because one, it consumes a lot of time to calculate if it works or not. And two, when you're calculating longer lines, there is a chance that in the third or fourth move, you forgot that your opponent can do an in-between move that could disrupt your attack. So yeah, if it's a longer game, I would maybe think of it. But this is a 30-minute challenge, so I gotta keep it simple. Also, I'm up by a minute. Not too much, but just enough for me to think of good moves. Not the best move, just good moves. Rook b1, I think it's good enough. Gets the work done. Nah, it's good enough. I should stop overthinking. I think my opponent is afraid of bishop takes c6. I think my opponent sees it. Bishop takes h6. I think he's over defending because there's a bishop defending on f6. There's also queen that can potentially guard on h7, which is why the sacrifice doesn't work. But also after queen h7 later on, there's an attack on my h2. So it doesn't really work for me. So I think I'll play for the center. So there's no more knight c2 move, attacking both a1 and e3. Therefore, I can consider bishop e3. Bishop e3, knight c2, and then pull back over here. I don't have good square for this bishop. Yeah, it's just there. Nothing to do. I cannot play bishop f4. There's a battery on this diagonal. Yeah, I can't do anything with this bishop. I like bishops most of the time, but this game, this dark square bishop, not really good. What can this dark square bishop really do? That's a good question. It's a good placement. Okay. What there? I have a check. Queen e8, queen g6. Question is that does it do anything? Maybe nothing. There's a check then. I thought the rook cannot move out of its background because of that reason. Oh yeah, maybe I'm wrong. I'm gonna play bishop e2. Bishop e3 or bishop e2. Bishop b2 is more practical because if I play bishop e3, there's knight c2, and then where do I go back? I don't really want to go to f2 because it blocks the rook. I think bishop b2 is the move. I'm just checking whether rook d2 can cause any harm. I don't see any potential harm with rook d2. Yes, I'm allowing rook d2, but yes, it attacks the pawn on a2, but other than that, it's alright. I can allow some aggressive moves from my opponent if that means I'm able to, develop my pieces and connect my rooks. Finally, at move 30, I'm able to connect my rooks. That's how underdeveloped this position is. Like, it took me 30 moves to connect my rooks. Also, I'm lacking control of the d2 square. I hate that I don't have control on these central square. Actually, I have some control on the e2. That's the only central control that I have. And then I have to take care of these overextended pawns. I also have to consider whether this check is good enough. It doesn't do much at the moment. I can also just move my king towards the h1, just so there's no check. If you check on this knight. Also, there's no check on this diagonal. Maybe that's a good habit. Yeah, why not? No, h1. I'm talking about h1. King to h1. Maybe it's a good habit. Maybe it's a wasted move. I don't have much going on because of how underdeveloped this position is. My bishop isn't in a good square. I mean, I can hope for a bishop trade, but this knight is blocking. It's on the way. I can't simply take the bishop. I take the knight with a bishop because bishop takes and it's in a good square. Yeah. Okay. So since there's no more check on the knight, there's no reveal attack on the bishop anymore. I'm thinking maybe I can reposition this rook. What is a better positioning for this rook? Rook c1, c1. Rook c1 pins the queen behind this knight. I can do a sneaky move like queen h4, try to attack that. Doesn't work. I can also just play rook d1 in case the knight moves somewhere. I can take the rook with a check. Rook bd1 now. Okay, I don't see any immediate plans for my opponent. Therefore, I can just put my pieces in better positions. I can also play rook d3, rook h3. Yeah, that could put a good use on my rook. I'd rather control the square, like the center squares. I was liking control of these squares before, but now I just don't have control of the e3 square. I'm controlling d3 and d2. I just have to control this e3 square. That's the only square that I really have to worry about. Because there's knight c2, knight e2, but then I have this immediate check. As long as I have an immediate check, if this knight gets removed, I think I'm fine. Unless knight takes. Yeah. I can also just lift up my rook to d3 and then play rook fd1. Yeah, why not? I mean, the queen is defending f5. I don't need the rook on f5 anymore. And as long as I have a check on that rook takes d8, I don't have to worry about this knight doing some dirty tricks. Or maybe I can take that. But then I have bishop take. No. So after takes, knight takes, bishop takes, queen takes. Maybe I allowed knight e6. Knight takes e6. Yeah, let's stick with a plan. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. Let's go with it. Rook fd1 was my plan. Stick with it. Stick with a plan. I also have a choice. I don't really want to sack. Why am I so inclined on sacking pieces? Like bishop c1, bishop h6. I'm thinking because this bishop doesn't have a good future on this diagonal, I can switch to c1, but then what bishop c1 achieves is only taking the pawn on e6. Just a piece sacrificing. Doesn't work. Okay, he's putting a battery on this thing. Wondering what that does. Does he have a revealed attack? No, I don't. I can immediately take. I can also check on e8. Anything can push. I can push, right? I can definitely do that. Yeah, looks good. I mean, yes, I'm giving up my h2 pawn, but it doesn't matter at this point. h2 pawn doesn't matter at this point because I have check in there. Then I'm able to promote. I think I'm able to promote. Yeah, he doesn't have anything protecting the back rank, so I think I'm able to promote. Yeah, there's no queen b8, there's no queen d8, but this is just free promotion, isn't it? Yeah, I think it's game over actually. In between move of knight there doesn't work because I have rook takes. Yeah, I think this is over. Oof. Okay, I planned rook takes. Does it work? Better be. If it doesn't work, I'll be upset. It better work. That was my plan. And there's queen takes. Queen takes. Oh yeah, I'm just up by a lot of pieces actually. It works. It's alright. It's all good. Just takes. I can attack this knight, and then I can trade bishop for a bishop. Then I'm up by 2 rooks. I'm fine. I thought the in between move knight takes f5 will get me in trouble. I'm fine. Yeah, I'm up by 2 rooks, so it's fine. I can just start picking up some points. I can double up with rook 1 d7, and then pull back to b7, pick up a pawn here. b7. It's just cleaning up. Cleaning up process. Gotta go with the procedure. Oh, it didn't define with pawn to f5. I'll take this one. Attacking the bishop and then checkmate right over there. I don't even have to clean up the pawns since he has pawn to f5. But both are losing, so I don't think it's that big of a deal. I almost pre-move rook f8. That would take the game longer. Okay. I just pick up the bishop. Here I can pre-move actually. Alright. It's just hot today. Okay, definitely checkmate over here. Alright, good game. Good game. Let me type something on the chat. Good game. Okay. I'll put this on an analysis board. Hopefully I can flip the board just to see if I can look at it on my opponent's perspective. Accuracy on low depth shows 93 versus 80%, but I'll flip the board. Okay, I am analyzing this game on Black's perspective to see where things really went wrong, because I've only seen it on my perspective. So game started with pawn to d4. This is a 30-minute game. Knight f6, knight f3, pawn to e6. Okay, so this is a Queen's Indian defense structure. Bishop e7, pawn to c5, and then when I castled, I mean, you can develop your pieces this way, but your main focus during the opening should still be castling. So if I'm playing black with the Queen's Indian defense like this, I will play bishop e7 and then maybe castle, or also bishop e7, then pawn to d5. So just so I can challenge the center before castling. The problem of pushing pawn to d5 though is that after c takes d5, there is a bishop b5 check. That's what I don't like about that line. I prefer castling right away, just so my king is in a safe position, and when my king is in safety, I can do whatever I want without getting checked. I just hate getting checked. If I'm checked, I have my plan stopped. Also, my pieces could go possibly in a square that I don't want it to be. That's what I don't like, getting checked. Anyway, what happened during the game? Pawn to d5 first. Yeah, I don't like an immediate pawn to d5. Simply, so when you play bishop e7, and then when you get checked over here on bishop d5, you also have an option to play king f8 if everything goes wrong. Like, you have a backup plan. So without this bishop on e7, you don't really have that king f8 option. So if you get checked, you're forced to go back. Your pieces are forced to block in a way that you might not like it to be. That's what I like about an immediate d5. So here I would have played bishop e7. Bishop e7 first, before pushing the pawn in the center. Takes. Also, this looks inaccurate, taking with a bishop. Because I have a knight c3 move attacking the bishop. So your bishop has to pull back, and you're moving your bishop forward and then backward during opening phase, which is considered a lot, especially if you're not castled yet. So a better move would be just pawn takes d5. So if I move my knight to c3, you don't have to pull any pieces back, it's just good as it is. And then later on, you can still play a move like knight e4. You might say that this bishop doesn't have a straight diagonal towards the king side, but instead, if you have this pawn on d5, you can reinforce knight e4, and this bishop will back up the knight on e4, making it a strong, solid knight on the center. So I believe a better move would be pawn takes d5 instead of this bishop takes d5 in the opening. So what I did is knight c3, attacking the bishop, so you have to pull it back. And here it looks like black is already in a disadvantage. White is already castled, therefore white is ready to attack. I thought bishop b5 would be an aggressive move. I attacked incorrectly here. I did something incorrectly because you were able to defend this diagonal anyway. You had enough defender. After knight e5, I still think that you had enough defender. The d7 square, there's no reveal attack. So I attacked incorrectly here. Pawn to d5. I have 1, 2 attackers on the d5 square. Might as well I thought I want to exchange the pawns over here because isolated pawn on e6 is considered weak. I didn't do it simply because this queen and bishop are lined up towards h2. Also, this bishop is like putting pressure on the g2 square. It might get dangerous if I open up the f file even more. So that's why I didn't take. I block with f4. It looks passive, but I still think the right move is pawn to e6, but I didn't do it. I got a bit scared of this diagonal attacks. Castle, you finally castled. Okay, I still think that this castling is a bit late. Also, white is able to push the pawn already. So the mistake happened way earlier. I'll go back a few moves. This move, pawn takes d5, should have been the move instead of bishop takes. If you took with a pawn, I think you'll be in a much better position. And then you can still do your structure that you're wanting to have. Bishop d6, queen c7, and then castle. But then you're just more developed if you took with a pawn. And also, you have more center control. In this game, I'm able to push multiple pawns just because you got behind on center control when you delayed castling. I think it's just a snowball process. If you don't castle right away, you might get behind on controlling the center. So what I did is just push the pawns right now. Although the eval would say it's equal, I just thought that I had a lot of control in the center at this point. Because I can play queen f3 and then maybe push these pawns. I was planning to push these pawns, pawn to f5, pawn to e6, but I think something else happened. Okay, I took the pawn here because you were up a pawn, and oops, the layout is a bit off. Just it. Okay, there you go. You were up a pawn, so I just took the pawn over here, just so you can be even in the kill. Also, I'm getting rid of this king kettle bishop. Bishop takes d5, queen takes. I thought here I'm already in an advantage. Rook a d8, have to go back. My plan is to go towards the queen side. My other option could have been queen e4. Queen e4 and then combine with bishop d3, I think would be more aggressive. Okay, f6 made things even worse. So if your opponent has a pawn on the center, you can think of this as that your opponent has an option to push. Your opponent is not forced to take this way. So if I push, what happens to your structure? Also, I would say this is a blunder when you push pawn to f6. So just keep your structure this way. If your opponent already has pawn to e5, the point is that if white ever pushes the pawn on e6, you have something to take. Also, this pawn on f5 is about to get pushed. Another way to defend against this is to push pawn to g6. Although you're not taking it, you're just switching to a fianchetto structure this way. Also, you could have pushed pawn to f5. I think pawn to f5. Pawn to f5 just gives white pass pawn actually. I'll just not move my pawn structure at all. Just keep it this way. I'll move something else. Like during the game, I was thinking of moves knight b8, knight c6, and then knight d4. So in this position, just look for pieces that are inactive and to see if we can make things better. So this knight doesn't really attack nor defend anything. You can't really sack the knight. It doesn't do anything. It doesn't have any immediate attack. Therefore, it makes the knight an inactive piece. What you could do is play knight b8, play a6, just so this bishop doesn't have an attack on the c6 square. So at this moment, both queen and bishop are targeting c6. So if you play knight b8, I'll move randomly for white. bishop e3, pawn to a6. Now you're kicking out the bishop. If they pull their bishop this way, you can even play pawn to b5, just so you can close this bishop from here. And then now you can finally play knight to c6. So this bishop on c2 puts a target on h7. So before playing knight c6, watch out if your opponent can play an immediate attack with a queen, let's say queen h5 or queen e4, delivering a checkmate. So here, I don't think it would work. Therefore, you can play knight c6. What will happen is if you play knight c6, queen h5, you have this pawn to g6, and it just blocks this diagonal and shutting down the checkmate threat. Also, you're being prepared for a fianchetto structure on the king side. So that doesn't work for white. Therefore, knight c6 here would be available. And then after knight c6, you're able to jump into knight d4, which is considered a good outpost for black, since you're able to defend it with a rook on the d-file. You can even double up your rook over here. So you can play knight c6, rook d7, rook fd8, so you have two rooks on the d-file defending the knight on the center, and that's just considered a strong move. So yeah, just when they play bishop c2, just watch out for this diagonal. Let's go back all the way. Yeah, here I would have moved that way. Knight b8, a6, push it further, and then play knight c6. Just so you can play knight c6. The point is that you look at your piece activity and say, which one of my pieces are not doing anything at the moment? Actually, most of the pieces are not doing anything. But I think the knight is an easy fix, because there's a knight outpost over on d4. So knight. So when you see a pawn structure, think of it as like you can put a knight in front of it. Definitely don't change this pawn structure. Keep it defensive like this, especially if your opponent has an option to push. Okay, let's go back to the game. Pawn to f6. My plan is to just push here right away to e6, but I thought an in-between move would be something good, because it's about to get kicked out anyway. With pawn to a6, pawn to b5, might as well go for an in-between move, bishop c4 check, and then push. So yeah, the damage that f6 causes is that I'm able to push towards e6, and an e6 pawn is something that's easy to defend, because I'm able to place a rook on the e-file if I want to defend it. And at the moment, there's no attacker on it, so this knight has to move many times before it's even able to attack e6 once, and then you have to put another attacker on it, but I'm easily able to defend it since it's on a light square. Black doesn't have a light square bishop anymore, and white does, making it something easy to defend. So this pass pawn on e6 is just super strong. Knight b8. I believe you found the right maneuver for this knight a bit late, with knight b8, knight c6, knight d4. This is something that you could have done instead of pushing pawn to f6. I think you found the good moves at this point, and then just placing the knight on the center. Knight. Huh? When did you play knight b4? I don't think rook d6 achieves anything. Like I said, this pawn is on a light square. I have a light square bishop, and black doesn't have light square bishop anymore. Therefore, so I have currently I have two defenders against one attacker. You're gonna need 3 attackers for it, which I think it's almost impossible to achieve, because you have to play something like rook e8 and then knight d8, and at that time when you have 3 attackers, all I had to do is simply play rook e1, and it just defends my overextended pawn already. So you're about to waste about 3 moves just so I can defend it with rook e1, which is something easy. Also have this resource of pawn to f5 if I want to defend it with a pawn instead of a piece. So I think rook d6 is something that's wasted the move. Instead here, I would have played knight d4. Bishop d3 attacking this h7 square. What did you play here? Pawn to h6. I think at this point is a bit too late to stop this attack. If you play h6, I have this queen f5 and then queen h7 checkmate threat. Also, if you play pawn to f5, there's only one defender on the f5 square, so white can immediately take it. Yeah, this is just not that good for black. I think it's just a bit too late at this point. A better defense here is just to, again, going back 2 moves ago, playing knight d4, just placing this knight on a good square that it defends something that could potentially benefit you in the future. So if you play bishop d4 instead, if I play bishop d3 threatening this checkmate threat, you have this f5 resource. The point is that this knight is temporarily defending f5. I say temporarily because this knight is vulnerable. White can play something like bishop b2 or bishop e3, removing that attacker, removing that defender on the f5 square, and that should be enough time for you to consolidate your other pieces like rook f6, rook df8, placing 2 rooks on the d file so that this pawn on f5 doesn't drop whatsoever. If you have f5, there's no attack on this diagonal. So I think the problem is that when you waste a move with rook e6 and you're not able to place a knight on its good optimal square like knight d4. Yeah, this is just too late. This is the point when you sacrifice a rook for a bishop. So white is up on exchange at this point, but it's down on development. White's plan here is just to keep up with the piece development, like connect the rooks, place this bishop on a good square, not even the best square, like bishop e3 or bishop b2, and then it's just your center will be attacked by both rooks on the d file and most likely game over. So I would say it's too late at this point. Yeah, knight d4. You found knight d4 a bit late. If knight d4 was there like 5 to 10 moves ago, I think the game would have been completely different. Into f5. I think this is just a slow death, I would say. There's no way to just... So what I have here is a pass pawn. You have to keep an eye on it. You have to put a piece defending the e7 square, or you have to even like block it with a piece just so I don't have the opportunity to push. The point of blocking or keeping an eye on e7 is that I don't push and then promote. And then yeah, this is just a problem, the pass pawn. I don't think you could have done anything to stop this pass pawn at all. There's a lot of ways for white to win the game, and there's not that many piece activity on black's end. There's only one open file, which is the d file. So the e file is semi-open. So it's open on white's side, but it's not open for black. And also queen is attacking e8. So therefore you have a weak e file. It's just hard to play at this point, I would say. This is just unavoidable. But if I can give 2 advice for this specific game, number 1 is that you can do whichever opening you'd like, but you have to worry about king safety and castling right away. Think twice before challenging the center, like this, pawn to d5. I would suggest bishop e7 first, and then maybe you have pawn to d5, but you can even go with bishop e7, and then actually here you have to push pawn to d5, and then after takes, actually going back, let's go with the actual game. So going back for this game, take with a pawn. Don't worry about your bishop being blocked on this diagonal. I believe you took with a bishop because you're worried that if you take with a pawn, oh, my bishop is just inactive. It's behind the pawn structure. But what it does, it barricades your e4 square. So instead of having a direct attack on g2 on where white's castling, your queenside fianchetto is just reinforcing the center, e4, where your knight can jump in later on. So definitely pawn takes if there's any exchanges on the center. Also knight takes here would be bad. So here you have three options: bishop takes, knight takes, and pawn takes. And bishop takes or knight takes get you in trouble. So bishop takes gets you in trouble because after knight jumps into c3 you have to pull back. Knight takes can get you in trouble because there's pawn to e4 pawn push, and then so there's no knight f4 because bishop defends that square. So you have to go back to f6. And notice that there are two pawns already on the center for white, whereas you have one pawn here on e6, which is considered like an inactive pawn on the center. So white is just controlling the center with two pawns. You have pawn on c4, which is pressuring the pawn on d4, but then there's a lot of attacks that can come, like an immediate pawn to d5, for example. There's just a lot of pressure for black to handle at this point. So definitely don't take with a knight because this push is just a lot strong, and it's something that's hard to handle. After takes, there's bishop d5 check, and it could get messy if you take with a knight, because your knight will be attacked by a pawn, and then your bishop could be attacked by a knight. But if you take with a pawn, there's no way for black to challenge it. They can play knight c3, and well, you don't really have to protect the d5 square because it's well defended, and there's no pawn push. So you can continue your development, like queen c7, bishop d6. Since this is like your preferred piece placement, you can definitely play bishop d6 right away over here, and this is just a good opening for you. So yeah, this is the first mistake. Pawn takes, bishop takes. That's the first mistake. And I would say the second mistake happened with pawn to f6. Where is it? Pawn to f6 is your second mistake of the game because it allows pawn to e6 pass pawn, and pass pawns are hard to stop, whether it could be middle game or end game. It's something that's hard to defend because you have to put a piece in front of it, or you have to assign a piece that defends the square in front of it so it cannot push further and promote. So definitely don't allow pass pawns. Yeah, those are the two mistakes: pawn to f6 and bishop takes d5 in the beginning. Hopefully this game is instructive as I expected it to be. Definitely had a lot of fun, and if you have any question for me, definitely you can send me a message or give me a comment. You can also have a match in the future. Anyway, if you're still watching, I appreciate you watching. Thank you so much, and I'll catch y'all later. Peace out.